It is often said that knowledge is power, and power is something that entices most young men. For decades, college and university was one of the best ways to gain more knowledge, thus increasing one's influence, power, and impact on the world. So if that's the case, then why aren't young men deciding to go to college anymore? Nearly 60% of all college students today are women. US colleges and universities have lost about 1.5 million students in the past several years, and men accounted for 71% of that loss. In this video, I want to explore the largest reasons behind the decline in college enrollment, why men specifically are seeing less and less value in a degree, and how I think all of this is tied to the recent US election results. Since the beginning of the written language, information has only been reserved for the most educated or the most wealthy. If you wanted access to more of the resources that increased your wealth, status, and knowledge, you either had to be born into an aristocratic family or work hard in several different fields of study to prove you were competent enough to acquire a high-paying job. Eventually, as populations grew into the millions, the importance of establishing public education became a focal point of developing nations, and this led to the modern-day education system. The purpose of this system is now well known. By giving people more access to information that was previously only reserved for the few, a nation could train more of their society to be competent workers, thus making the average person more wealthy and contributing to the growth of that nation's economy as well. The modern-day education system has been around for a while now, and for a long time, most companies would look at a college degree as a sign that a worker is better suited to succeed at their company and make them money, which is reflected in how much more money college degree holders are making in 2024. But even though you are technically almost guaranteed to make more money with a degree, what has changed in the past decade or two is the benefit to cost ratio and the importance of a degree to employers. You see, once work shifted primarily from physical labor to knowledge-based work, aka work that requires you to think for a living using decision-making, problem-solving, and analysis, universities became the main source of providing more of these workers to these newly evolved companies. With more and more companies requiring a university-based education, this skyrocketed the amount of young people going to college, thus causing what has been coined degree inflation. It's basically what happened when many jobs, which previously never needed degrees, started requiring them. In theory, this was supposed to help companies due to them having more employees with college degrees, the thing that is associated with more competent workers. But college wasn't really preparing people for real-world applications, and in many cases, it still doesn't. By 2019, 87% of companies worldwide reported that they either already had skill gaps in their workforce or expected to experience them within a few years. In the same year, only 27% of small companies and 29% of large companies believed they had the right talent for digital transformation. And the future employees themselves weren't happy with how college was preparing them either. In 2015, a UK study found that 92% of students wanted work experience opportunities to be a part of their university degree, but less than half had access to them. And by this point, due to how high the supply was in the job market for people with four-year degrees, people weren't guaranteed the same amount of opportunities to get a job right out of college as people were in the 80s or 90s. In 2022, almost 40% of recent college grads were underemployed in the United States, and this was after most grads had a significant financial investment in their studies. Now, not only are you competing with the best of degree holders in the job market, but you're also paying an exorbitant amount of money more to get that degree. Since the 1980s, the cost of college has risen by nearly 200%, while the average earnings for those aged 22 to 27 haven't even come close to rising at the same rate. And we can't discuss the value of a college education today without also considering how the ways in which we acquire information has changed since the 1980s. With the dawn of the digital age, having access to any and every book, language, and other resources at one's fingertips, the ability to acquire highly specialized, real-world knowledge grew exponentially. Knowledge was no longer reserved for the ultra-wealthy before public education, or even only for those who went through the typical path of formal education when that became the most popular. If you wanted to learn something that the market deemed to be valuable and make money to provide for yourself and those around you, you could do it with just your phone and an internet connection. The companies hiring the workers taking advantage of the digital age began to notice this trend as well, and this spawned what is now referred to as the degree reset that we are currently in. The degree reset is a term coined by the Burning Glass Institute that is used to describe employers' shift away from requiring a 4-year degree within their hiring process. A recent study found that 45% of employers have already removed the college degree requirement for certain roles, and 72% prioritize candidates' skills and experience over degrees. Another report by the Burning Glass Institute themselves found that 46% of middle skill and 31% of high skill jobs had experienced degree resets between 2017 and 2019. The trend is now clear. We no longer live in a college-driven labor market. We live in a skills-driven labor market. That is what is making a degree less valuable, and I can only imagine that that statistic of college degree holders earning more than those without a degree is only going to become more obsolete in the future. There are loads of amazing resources out there on the internet to learn skills that lead to high-paying jobs, and I want to show you guys one that I've been using recently, which is the sponsor of today's video, Masterclass. Masterclass is a platform of teachers at the highest level of their craft in the fields of entrepreneurship, creativity, and leadership, giving you full classes on useful skills. There's some of the biggest names in the industry on there acting as your personal mentor, from retired Navy SEAL Jocko Willink to the author of Atomic Habits James Clear to billionaire investor Mark Cuban. I'm gonna let you guys be the first to know this, as I haven't announced this on any platform yet, but I actually plan to start writing my first novel in January of next year. So to help with that, I've been learning from Neil Gaiman, author of Coraline, Good Omens, and several other popular books about how to make a fantasy fiction world, despite all its fantasy, feel real, and Roxane Gay's classes about getting published and finding an agent have been proving to come in handy too. You now have access to information from the most influential minds of this generation who can actually develop you skills that lead to a good job or you becoming an entrepreneur, thanks to platforms like Masterclass. So if you're interested in turning your professional aspirations into achievements, then you can click the first link in my description. That's going to give you 15% off Masterclass. Go check that out. So everything I presented so far helps to explain why college enrollment has been dropping steadily for both genders, and I needed to present these things because they apply just as much to both genders. But none of these reasons explain why men specifically are enrolling in college so much less than women. And on top of that, when men do enroll, they aren't finishing their 4 years of college as often as women either. What is it about college that is so unattractive to young men right now? Well, I think it has everything to do with our current masculinity crisis and the culture surrounding college campuses. For several hundred years, the biggest advocates for college were some of the most powerful men in the world. George Washington once said, "The best means of forming a manly, virtuous, and happy people will be found in the right education of youth. Without this foundation, every other means, in my opinion, must fail." But now when men look around their classrooms, how they're being taught, and who is teaching them, it all signals much more femininity than masculinity. There's a sociology term called white flight that I first discovered when I came across this article about why male college enrollment is dropping that I will be referencing for the remainder of this video. White flight is a term that describes how white people move out of neighborhoods when more people of color move in, and when minority populations become the majority, it usually follows that that neighborhood decreases in value. From this term, another similar one spawned out of it, male flight. Male flight describes the phenomenon in which men start leaving a profession, group, hobby, or industry when it reaches a certain percentage of women. And the tipping point appears to be when women reach 60% of that profession or industry. Let's take veterinary school, for example. In 1969, almost all veterinary students were male at 89%. By 1987, male enrollment was equal to female at 50%. And by 2009, male enrollment in veterinary schools had plummeted to just 22.4%. As soon as women start to dominate a certain industry, that industry is seen as more feminine, not even because of the nature of the industry itself, but because of who occupies that industry the most. Now, there's definitely some arguments to be made about whether this would always be the case. For example, if we were to take like construction workers and 70% of construction workers became women, would we then view construction as a feminine thing? Not sure about that, but the point remains that this is what happened to college. For every 1% increase in the proportion of women in the student body, 1.7 fewer men applied. In fact, one more woman applying was an even greater deterrent than $1,000 in extra tuition. Add that on top of the fact that a long time ago, the profession of teaching as a whole became quite female-dominated, and it's no wonder why young men view the college experience as an antagonist to their masculinity. A Quora answer by the user Chris Bren provides further explanation. Because the concept of school is feminine. In Spanish, school is escuela, ending in a, which is a feminine. Think about what you do at school. You sit down, you accept that you don't know shit, and you accept that your teacher is right and you have to shut up and listen. Obedience is what school requires, which is a feminine trait. What is masculine is standing up in the classroom and saying, fuck this shit, I'm gonna do it my way. You're wrong. I'm right. I'm not gonna listen to you. That is a very masculine thing to do, and that's why men who are on average more masculine essentially do that. There's definitely a bit of truth to that statement, but really this issue is less about the nature of education itself and much more to do with the lack of positive role models in higher education. You see, curriculums in school are not meant to empower men to embrace their masculine features. More often than not, they teach men about the more gruesome sides of masculinity that history highlights more than the positives. Just like that Quora comment said, a lot of the college experience teaches men to not speak up, to be obedient, and to not do the things that are associated with traditional masculinity. College as a whole is a very progressive place. It's all about changing the traditional narrative on things and embracing individualism, and this has led to a massive overtaking of those who lean to the left side of the political spectrum as the ones enrolling in college. And what is severely lacking from most leaders on the left side? Anything in regards to traditional positive masculinity. Unlike heavy, right-leaning conservative people, which many of you still think I am, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that women having access to education and more opportunities in the workforce is a bad thing. They should have the opportunity to access higher education, get degrees, and get a high-paying job if they want to. They should be able to break some of the traditional feminine norms and not have to be a stay-at-home wife just to live and be more independent if they want to be. But the problem with the uprise in female empowerment in the past couple decades is that it has coincided with the demonization of masculinity in left-leaning spaces. For years now, while women have been told they can do anything men can, that they are powerful and that they are loved, men have been being told that they are too assertive, they are misogynistic creeps, they are no longer needed, and they are dispensable objects. And there's a complete lack of empathy from the left about male issues that affect all of us. Absolutely no type of reform is being enacted by left-leaning places like college to teach men how to hone their positive masculinity, like courage, strength, providing for and helping others, having a strong purpose, and standing up for what they believe in. That would ironically lead to a lessening of all the things they dislike about men. Instead, the general sentiment has been one of, there is something wrong with you. These positive masculine role models are not completely missing from the world. They do exist, although finding ones that are uplifting men without putting down women are very far and few in between. But the problem is most of these types of male role models only reside on the right-leaning side of the political spectrum. This is why so many Gen Z males are now Republican, and this, I believe, is a massive reason why Trump won this year's election. Almost all the men that young men are now looking up to in the media that are making men feel good about being strong men endorsed Donald Trump. So if the left and college want young men back, or at the very least want a lot of young men to stop having such distasteful emotions and energy towards women and people on the left-leaning side of politics, they don't need to just teach more real-world skills and make college more affordable. That applies to both genders. It's really about reminding them why their positive masculinity is such a huge force for good in this world. It's about telling men that there is nothing wrong with them for being a man. It's about establishing more positive representations of masculinity in the media and giving men the space to open up about their issues and resolve them in a way that is in alignment with what makes men specifically heal. And more often than not, I think that is making them feel competent and useful and letting them know that they're actually worth something. Right now, college is not allowing men to feel like they can achieve these things in college. And until something changes, I think this trend is going to continue. As for what type of masculinity we should be promoting, I think it does involve a lot of the traits that we typically associate with traditional masculinity, but I think we can improve upon traditional masculinity and make it better. If you're a young guy who's confused about their masculinity, or you're just a woman who's trying to understand men's struggles a bit better, then check out this video where I try to explain to you what this upgraded version of masculinity would look like. I think the thing I propose in that video is going to surprise a lot of you, so check it out.